Okay, well, welcome. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, as Emma said, I'm hoping that you recognise one or the other of us, but just an introduction. I'm Gilly Bachelor, and I'm a travel consultant. So very simply, a travel agent. We just operate in a different way, i.e. we're ABTA and ATL bonded, but we just work from our own offices and we have private clients. So anything a travel agent can do or anything that's online, we can do as well, but we just do it with a high level of personal service, and we do events such as these. So welcome to everyone. So I'm going to introduce you to Emma as well. I came up with the idea of wanting to do this a while ago, and I asked Emma to join me because our experiences of cruising are very, very different. Mine is more in the luxury end of the market, and Emma has got great experience with these larger ships. Now, Emma has a superpower, and that is cabin selection. So she's going to tell you a bit more about that. So between the two of us, we should be able to cover off most of your questions. So that's a little bit about me. So thank you for joining us, and I'll hand you over to Emma then.
Evening, nice to see you all. Welcome to those who know me and those who don't. Yes, cabin crew selection is my superpower. I spend more time than is healthy thinking about where people's cabins should be located on the ship. So if you've booked a holiday with me, which I know some of you have, most people just say to me, I'll let you choose, because I spend a lot of time thinking about where best to put your cabin. So today we're going to talk about the new cruise experience. Ooh. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my cruising history. I've been cruising since 2008. My first cruise was on Oceana, one of P&O's smaller ships, and sadly has now been sold. And then I went on a longer cruise in 2012 to the Med, and I've pretty much cruised every year at least once since then. I cruised pre my daughter Harriet as a couple with my husband. We went to Alaska, we went to the Caribbean, we went to the Med. And since Harriet's been born, we've done a number of family cruises to Norway, to Iberia, Spain, France, and yeah, so sort of places you can sail to out of the UK. My experience is mainly in mainstream cruise lines. So I've sailed on P&O, Celebrity, Royal Caribbean and Princess. So I've got a really good cruise experience across all of those brands. I am also a self-styled cruise geek. I follow lots of people who talk about cruises. I pore over deck plans and new cruise information that's coming through. I've got a cruise booked on the brand new Iona, which is coming out in, well, should have been last year, will be this year, but I'm sailing on in next year, so I'm really looking forward to that. I think that's all to say. Yeah, Gilly, handing over to you to talk about your cruise experience.
Okay, so interestingly, I learned something new today. I did my first cruise in 1997, and it was actually on the same ship that Emma went on as well, and that's P&O's Oceana. And what I was telling Emma today, the first cruise I ever went on, we had an inside cabin. Because that's because, to be honest, that's all we could afford at the time. And we did the Baltic capitals. It was an amazing trip and really did start my love of cruising. Now, the last time I cruised, I was actually in the South China Seas this time last year. I set off from Hong Kong on my way to the Philippines and then on to Singapore. Needless to say, that didn't quite happen that way because we got halfway, well, no, we got pretty much to the Philippines and then they wouldn't welcome us, and we actually found ourselves at sea for 7 days, which might sound terrible, but I was on the Seabourn Ovation, which is just an absolutely stunning ship. So we had beautiful weather, beautiful food, lots of entertainment. So it wasn't, you know, it wasn't too onerous. And sadly, that's the last time that Seabourn Ovation has actually cruised. So, and she's not really due to start again probably till May or even later this year, but that's the case for most cruise companies. So the picture on the far right there, I'm on the deck, that was my 5th wedding anniversary with my husband, and that was on the Azura. And we were on that particular one because Russell Watson was on there, and that's a very special time for us. And then the middle section, as you will see, that's me and Brian, very much worth the wear for drink. That's actually probably not good etiquette, and we were all ready for muster stations there. So I have a cruise of P&Os we've talked about, but also with Regent, where I did Alaska, which was completely stunning, Silver Sea, where I have done the Suez Canal, going from Port Said to Dubai, also lots of Caribbean with Silver Sea, and the most recent one I did with in the South China Seas was with Seabourn. So these are smaller, more luxury end of the market, but I do love a bit of P&O as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Gilly. I've just muted everyone just in case there's any sort of background noise so that I don't have to kind of cut people off in the middle of the presentation. Gilly, can I just check, are you recording? Yes? Sorry, I've put you on mute as well. I've muted you, so you need to unmute yourself. Can't hear you.
I am recording.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, great. Welcome. A few people have just joined, so we just did a bit of introduction, myself and Gilly, and now we're going to go on and talk a little bit about what today's presentation is about. So the new cruise experience. What we're here today to discuss is what cruising will look like going forward. Now, a lot of this information is perhaps not guesswork, but hasn't been fixed yet because, of course, cruising hasn't restarted. There are a number of cruise companies working together under CLIA, which is kind of the regulators, trying to get a set of guidance together that all cruise lines will essentially follow. But there are, of course, going to be differences between cruise lines that sail out of the US, because they will be under different regulations to those that sail from the UK and from other countries around the world, or those primarily the ones that are going to affect people here, because even if the cruise lines don't sail out of those countries, that's where they're registered or where they sort of take their regulations from. So what we're going to be talking about is broad brushstrokes, things we suspect, things we imagine is going to happen, things we've been told probably will happen, but some detail won't be released until actually cruises start. And even then, I think once cruises start, things will start to change a little as they see how things work. It'll be a bit of a suck it and see to a certain extent. But this is why working with a travel agent is brilliant, because we're sharing this information with you now as much as we can, but also we will continue to share information with you before you book a cruise and right up until you sail on a cruise. So we will make sure that you're up to date with all the information and that you're aware of what's going on. You won't need to go searching on the internet to find out what my cruise is going to look like, or rely on the cruise lines to send you their glossed up version. Gilly and I will share with you what we know, and that will help you to be best prepared for your holiday. Oh, I was going to say something just slipped out of my head there, but I remember what it is now. Actually, yesterday I was really lucky enough to speak with the sales manager from P&O to get an overview of what their intentions are when they start to sail. So a lot of the guidance we're going to talk about is based on information that I literally gained yesterday. So that is about as much up-to-date information as we can get. So we hope that will be useful to you. There really isn't anything more, that we could know at this stage. And so, is there anything else, Gilly, I've missed in that section?
Well, yeah, I think there is sort of one sort of point in here, Emma, is that we're focusing on cruising here, but really everything that we talk about is relevant to going on holiday altogether, because the way that we're holidaying now and the rules and restrictions actually are there's very little difference between what's going on in a hotel and a resort and then what's going on a ship. So, these things are pretty much applicable to whatever you're doing this year and possibly into 2022 as well.
Great, thanks. Do you want to then?
Okay, right. So that's a great lead into what I'm talking about now. So this is pre-travel. So this is before we've even got you on your holiday. I think there is a general agreement that at least for 2021, and my view would be to well into 2022, that pre-travel testing, COVID testing, will be mandatory. So that will mean, like, for example, as I said, you know, if you were traveling anywhere now, obviously we're in lockdown, so we're not going anywhere. So let's say we weren't in lockdown and you were going to Barbados or St. Lucia or the Canaries, they've all got entry requirements and they all require you to do a COVID test. And that can be anything from 7 days before right up until 72 hours before. And that is what's called a PCR test. And you need to go to a registered facility and you need a travel certificate that comes with it. You can't unfortunately do it on the NHS because that you need that certificate, and that has your passport number and such like, and it's part of your travel documentation. So our view is that that will be a mandatory requirement to travel full stop in 2021, whether you're cruising or not. But also what, and Emma was talking a bit about this in her conversation with P&O today, is that we are pretty damn sure that you will also be tested at embarkation as well. So you'll have done your pre-travel COVID test. And we're seeing what this is being facilitated by is about new testing. You might have heard of lateral flow. The great thing about lateral flow is it's very quick and easy. They argue that it's not quite as reliable as PCR, but it's getting pretty close. And that will mean that you will come to do your embarkation, which Emma's going to talk about in a minute, but you will be tested as part of that as well. Also, if you're traveling right now, every country you're going to has prerequisites in terms of forms and such like you have to fill in. Many are online. So we see those health forms, you know, before you get on a couple of days or a couple of weeks before is mandatory as well. Now, a thing that we have seen in recent news, some of you who are avid cruisers and sort of follow the news might have heard the announcement that Saga has made the decision only to allow passengers on board that have been fully vaccinated. So to be clear, you've had to have one of the 4 official vaccines, you've had to have 2 doses, and the last dose must be no less than 2 weeks before you get on. Now, this has been quite divisory, and also what's been interesting is the American ships are saying they don't even think that it's legal. So we don't necessarily think that vaccinations will be mandatory across all lines, but certainly that is what Saga is saying. But it will not negate the need to test as well. It's all part, you know, of a regime. So we're not anticipating seeing vaccination as a widespread thing through cruising. We know we could be wrong on that, but I think so many countries are behind. I think one of the reasons Saga has done it is because its demographic, it's 55 plus, but most of its guests would be 65 plus, is their logical conclusion is they will be vaccinated should they wish to be, you know, by the summer, and that will get them sailing quicker. So just a thick point to pick up there in terms of pre-travel. Terms and conditions for all holiday bookings are the most flexible that we've ever seen them in terms of options to rebook, free amend, and then in certain cases refunds. But there are certain times that you will not necessarily be covered. So where we're seeing the grey area, and this is with all holidays, is if you have to pre-test. Say, for example, you've got a test that between that 3 and 7 days. If you test positive, it is really important that you have a travel insurance policy in place that has cover for that. And there are lots in the market. Both Emma and I have got them through Hayes, who is our parent company. So we can talk to you about that. But what it also extends to as well. So if you were unlucky enough to test positive, but also the member of your party tested positive, but also if you had to isolate because someone you had been in touch with, or you'd been contacted by track and trace. So like with any holiday, travel insurance is key as part of that pre-travel prerequisite. And both Emma and I have got really good knowledge of this and absolutely happy to talk you through that. So that's pretty much the pre-travel element, Emma, unless I've missed anything.
No, that's good. I'm just checking if there's any questions. I'm struggling to see the chat because I've just got so many things open.
No, hang on. No questions on that one yet.
Okay, so when we talk about getting on board the ship, there are going to be some changes. One of the things Gilly has already mentioned is testing at the port. P&O are already gearing up to sort that out, and they are very well sort of planning in advance to make sure that this is something that can happen seamlessly. But actually what I think is going to happen is while this will be a sort of a time consuming element to a certain extent, even though the tests are quick, it's still going to take a while to test everyone. Everything else is going to be much more automated. We've already seen the big cruise lines move towards this anyway. So Royal Caribbean have an app, and a lot of them are using barcodes and QR codes. So you complete all your travel information online. You basically show a piece of paper and you show your passport, and then everything, you know, is fine. The only thing then you will need to do is the health screening. And if you are unable to travel because you fail the health screening, what cruise lines are saying is that they will give you cruise credit for another cruise. But as Gilly said, travel insurance is really important for that. But also the other thing to be aware of is if you are traveling with other people, you should make sure that your bookings are linked, because if one party or one group, one person of your group is unable to travel, you may wish to carry on, and that's fine. But if they can't, sorry, if you don't want to, then you can, if your travel is linked, then you will most likely be able to benefit from sort of a refund or a cruise credit for your cruise. So really important that you get those things sorted, and that's something Gilly and I will sort out for you, is to make sure your bookings are linked with anyone that you're traveling with. Other things we're likely to see at embarkation are staggered embarkation times. It's probably going to take a lot longer than normal, and you probably will have to come at an allocated time. They've started doing this pre-COVID, actually, trying to get people to come to the ports at specific times, and it was very much not enforced. So people just ignored it. So, but I think this will be something that will be enforced. And that will make sort of the social distancing and the checking a lot easier. So none of these things, if you've cruised before, I don't think there's anything there that is going to be massively different from what you would expect. The main thing that will be different that we haven't seen before, obviously, is COVID testing, but everything else is already where the cruise lines were moving anyway. So that's great, really. Anything to add there? Oh, there's a few questions. Let me.
Yeah, these are about travel insurance from Glenda. I've said that you'll send her the details afterwards, Emma.
Yeah, I'll have a chat with you, Glenda, about that.
But I'm glad to see that she's got 2 cruises booked. She's a girl after my own heart with that.
Okay.
My first 2 cruises.
Okay. Go big or go home, Glenda. Love it. Okay.
That seems to be the way at the moment. Quite a few of my customers have got one cruise book and are looking to book a second one before they've even been on the first one. They're so excited just about the thought of cruising that they have to book another one.
That sounds perfect. Okay, so let's talk about new processes and procedures. You can see a photo of Emma there looking far too excited in her life jacket. She's actually doing muster stations, and I know we've got a mix of people on here, of seasoned cruisers to people who've never cruised at all. So there's just a little bit of an explanation. What will happen is you will get on board, and either just before sailing or just afterwards, you'll have a process which is called muster station. So you'll all have to go, or typically this is what would have happened. You'd have all gone to an area. There'll be an area mark on your door, and it'll say you need to go to muster station A. And what it's doing is taking you there, and it's where your lifeboats are located. So hopefully you'll never ever need it, but that's what it's all about, to do with maritime law and your safety. So they have to go through this process. It's the most boring part of cruising. So you're all excited, and then it kind of takes an hour or maybe a bit less, but essentially you go listen to these presentations, and then you all get collected, you all get ticked off a list, and then you all come back. What will happen now, which I'm super excited about, is you'll be able to do it in your cabin. So you'll watch videos, and they'll have an interactive app as well on your phone, it looks like in most cases. But what you will have to do, it'll say where your muster station is. which is located near your set of lifeboats, and you'll have to go there and scan your phone or check in with someone. So you can't not go. It just means that you don't have to go with hordes of other people. And that's the key to it, is because when these muster drills are done, that is probably the only time that everyone is out of the cabin. You will see people then that you never ever see again. So it's the busiest time ever. And obviously for social distancing reasons, they've got to change that process. So to be honest, I'm quite excited by that, and that is changing. So they're going to be keeping us safe, and I think perhaps we'll take on more if we've got to actually follow it on our phone, and then you've got a few questions that you answer, and then you go and find your way to your muster station. So that's the first thing. The other thing I mentioned there is social distancing. This is no different from being in a resort or even being in Sainsbury's. There's two things which are going to happen with social distancing. Emma and I had a debate about this today in terms of the capacity on ships. Cruising is incredibly popular, and the vast majority of cruises would run pretty close onto capacity. I think people would be surprised that most would be 90 to 100% full. And as Emma pointed out, if you've ever tried to change your cabin on a cruise, it actually can be quite difficult, not because they're being difficult, it's just that there isn't anything else available. So let's say that typically there'd be 90 to 100%. What we think with these initial cruises, or what we're being told, they'll originally run with about 50%. Now we see that increasing to around 75%, but we can't see it increasing above that for at least 12 months. Okay, so that's going to be interesting. We're going to have, just less people, less people on the ship. We'll also expect thoroughfares. You will have like routes out and routes in, but again, we're used to these. Again, I don't think we'll have them forever, but in some of these ships, if you're on a bigger ship, then it's not such an issue, but some of these spaces are quite tight, so they will want to introduce one-way systems if they can. But again, in any hotel, we're absolutely used to that now if we've traveled. Now, masks is a really, we had a lot of feedback on this, and if we'd have done this presentation 6 months ago, a lot of people would have said to us, well, if I've got to wear a mask, I'm not going. Now, we've seen an absolute trend away from that opinion, just because we're all wearing them here now. If we leave our home, we've got to wear a mask. Again, I travelled last year. I went to Crete in August, and I was in Fuerteventura in February, and that's the rules. You leave your room, you put on your mask, get to your sunbed, you can take it off. If you're sitting down having a meal and drinks, you take it off. It's exactly the same as what we're doing here, and we think that masks are going to be here for a long while yet. There is a question mark, and Emma and I were talking about this today, and this is being driven more by the American lines than ours in terms of what age that will be. Because if you've got young children, at what age will they have to wear a mask? And that is going to be very, very much dependent on the ship that you're on and the cruise line that you're on. But yes, masks definitely in those internal spaces will be here definitely for 2021. Also, when you're on board, you need to expect that you'll have routine screening. These thermal thermometers now, where they just like fire a gun at your head, you'll be seeing more of those. Expect multiple temperature checks. Also, you may not even know that you're being temperature checked. They've got all thermal imaging and cameras and such like, so you're probably having your temperature checked numerous times a day, but you wouldn't necessarily be aware of it. And also, there will be very strict rules. And to be fair, cruising has always been good on this in terms of your own personal hygiene, in terms of washing your hands regularly, lots of hand sanitizer everywhere. And every time that you sort of touch something to do that. But I think people are getting much better than that anyway. So nothing really any differently than if we were doing out to dinner in the UK or traveling to a hotel. But certainly quite a different experience if you were sailing 12 months ago.
A couple of questions there, Gilly. Mona's asking, have they reduced staff numbers too? I've not seen any indication that they're going to reduce staff numbers, because they will need the extra staff in order to do additional cleaning and
completely, yeah,
maintain the protocols they want. Glenda was asking about reduced capacity. Glenda, they won't sell past that capacity right now. So the cruises that are being booked the cruises that are going to go ahead won't be that full now anyway. So they just won't, they'll sell them to a certain capacity, and then as they know what's going on, then they'll probably release more capacity. I've not seen any cruises being sold out or anyone being told that they can't cruise because of reduced capacity.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I think Gail Mead has has messaged me directly instead of the wider group to ask a question as well.
Oh, sorry, Gail. Gail, do you want to just pop it in there? Make sure you just put everyone, and then we can see it.
Just while that's happening, can I just come back to the staff thing?
Yeah.
So I'm actually, it's great that they're going to have numbers to still offer the same service, but in terms of safety of the staff, do they not have to social distance, or do they have enough space to allow that? Or do they essentially?
We're going to come on. We're going to come on to that. Under this new process and policies, this is all which you will touch and feel, okay? We'll come on to a slide in a couple, which is also what's behind the scenes, because you're absolutely right. In many respects, the weakest link is not the guests, it's actually the crew. And that has been 100%, focus. So I'll come on to that. But yeah, great question.
Okay, so just checking if we've covered all that. Yeah, great. Okay, so we're going to move on and just talk a little about entertainment. Now, lots of people cruise, and the entertainment is like the #1 reason that they go on board, particularly those of us who like big ships. Then, the different entertainment options are one of the main draws of those ships. And talking to P&O yesterday, and I have reason to believe that it's going to be the same across all cruise lines, is they don't anticipate any significant change to the experience that you would have in terms of the things you'll be able to do now versus what you were able to do before. So they're not anticipating closing off entertainment venues or reducing the amount of entertainment that they're going to offer. What they will do is try and think more smartly about what they're offering. So initially, social distancing is obviously going to be a big deal. That will change over time. Like as things change over time, they will, they will sort of review those policies. But what they're initially going to do is social distancing, for example, during the shows that they have in the main theatre, or they'll just put on more shows. So if they normally do 2, they may do 3 or 4 sessions of the same show to give more people the opportunity to try it. Gilly and I were having a long conversation earlier, and I think that, well, we both think that they will start to be clever about how they use different spaces around the ship. If you've never been on a cruise, particularly on the largest cruise ships, they will have multiple entertainment venues. They will have theatres, they will have ice shows, like you see in the picture. They will have, and they can use these venues for more than one thing. And there are times when, for example, the theatre may only be used for 2 hours a day. Well, actually, that's a massive space that they could use for, rather than using one of the smaller pubs to do a quiz, they could do a quiz in the main theatre, because that space will be available and holds 1,000 people. So they can change the way that they work very easily using the different venues in the ship without compromising the amount of entertainment that they're offering on board. We will see things like staggered timings, which might actually work out better for some people. You may prefer, I personally would prefer to see a show in the afternoon rather than an evening, because once I've eaten my 4-course dinner, I'm ready for my bed. So sometimes, having the, because when I sailed on, I've been on the largest ship in the world twice. Different ship was the largest, then they did another one, and that was the largest. So when I went on those ships, they offered afternoon opportunities to see their kind of Broadway shows, and I really enjoyed that, and I think we'll see more of that. Technology is also going to play a part in this, so I think they will be using technology to reserve spaces or to allocate spaces so that you will be able to take advantage of the opportunities to see the different shows, but you can just sort of choose how to do them. Royal Caribbean particularly are already doing this and have already been doing this for many years. So this is not anything new and nothing different to what we have already seen. I think other cruise lines will start to catch up, and if they can't do it from a technological point of view, they will find another kind of solution. But as I was saying to Gilly, cruise lines are really skilled at keeping people spread out across the ship, because what they don't want anyway, regardless of social distancing, is everyone trying to do everything at once. So they will schedule activities to draw customers to different parts of the ship, and they're so good at it that even when you go on a ship with 6,000 people, you never see 6,000 people. You may feel sometimes like you were the only person on board, because they're so good at doing that. And this will just be a different use of that skill to kind of give people the same experience. But the other thing I wanted to touch on is kids clubs. Now, I don't know how many of you have young children. I do. And one of the reasons I cruise is so that she can go to kids club and I can have a rest. So that was one of the questions that I asked P&O yesterday, was do they anticipate a change to the kids clubs? And they said no. But what they would expect perhaps, and they haven't made a final decision about this, is that whether they will bubble the children. So if they've got 40 children in the sort of 5 to 8 age range, they might have 2 groups, like an A group and a B group, and then you'll be able to sort of go when it's your group's turn, just to give that extra opportunity. They're not going to expect the children to social distance in the way that adults do, but just having more space will obviously help, and having less different families sort of together will help from that point of view as well. But they're great in terms of, you know, sanitation, keeping all those areas clean. So I feel sort of relieved about that, because that was one of the main reasons we enjoy cruising. So largely, I don't think there will be much of a change in entertainment. It'll be the same, but done slightly differently. And so just checking, Gail, you asked your question, which I already I answered. That's fine, no problem. Anything to add there, Gilly?
No, not at all. Great roundup.
Can I ask a question? Is that all right?
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
In terms of the IT, so P&O, I'm not going to swear, but a bit pants with that IT. Have they committed to an app, or is it just that others have an app and it's great, and we hope that they will do that in the future?
No, they haven't committed to anything. I just think that, and this is why kind of we are talking in big brush strokes, you know, some will do it via an app, some will do it via other technology. Princess, for example, have got like these medallions. I don't know if anyone has seen this. They've got like medallion technology. Now, Princess is part of Carnival, which P&O are part of. So we may see that. I'm not expecting that by the time we restart cruising, P&O are going to have a fabulous app. And I think that's probably hoping too much. But I think that moving forward, those are the ways that cruise lines are going to go, and that is going to make things easier. But if they don't, they will find other ways to do it. And I imagine, you know, kind of P&O are a bit more kind of pen and paper, so it'll probably be more a case of, you know, they'll block you in groups, you know, your allocated time or your allocated option to do is to do this. That's what I anticipate will happen. But we do need to wait for some of the details to come out. It is a little bit of conjecture on that sort of area at the moment.
The technology enhancements are right at the top of the list in terms of investment, and essentially they've got this time now, you know, to focus on this. P&O typically does a lot for the TV, so we may see that as its, you know, as its primary. But I would anticipate that most cruise lines would have some sort of app within the next 12 months, and I think probably P&O is going to have to catch up with that.
Okay. Well, just for the record, I'm very pro app, and so if you want to pass on that feedback, I'd be grateful.
Yeah, no, completely, and we will do, you know, for sure, because a lot of people are, you know, do most of their things through their mobile devices. So, yeah, no, I completely understand that.
We'll send Gilly to tell them. Your turn to talk about timing.
This is a great question here. Have you seen this, Emma? So, from a financial perspective, obviously, they've lost a lot of business. Do you foresee them reducing any of the experience in order to cut costs? I just don't think they can. You know, I think that they've got to get smarter at things, and I think technology will play a huge part of that. If they don't invest in the experience, people will vote with their feet. They'll come once and they just won't come again. It's so competitive, the cruise market, so competitive. There are so many choices. I mean, Emma has sort of, you know, listed, you know, the cruise lines that she's been with. And if I look at things like Silversea, Seabourn, and Regent, now they'll all tell you that they're different, but in my opinion, actually they've got more in common than they have that's different. So it's quite difficult to choose between the three of them. It'd be itinerary and maybe price based. So if one dropped in quality, people just vote with their feet.
And yeah, I agree. And also, actually, a lot of the expenditure in experiences is down to the ship. So some of the things that they have built into the ship already exist. So I don't think they will. I don't think they would be massive. I don't think they would make massive savings if they decided to reduce the experiences once they've already.
It's a false economy. Yeah, I mean, it's the same with hotels as well. I think they're just seeing it as an investment, but we're seeing no evidence of that. Put it that way.
And the other question, Kim's asked, will all the cruise line companies survive? What are the safer options? I mean, that's an excellent
already gone.
question. And, you know, it's an impossible question to answer. But what I would say is that most of these cruise lines are part of larger corporations. So P&O, Princess, NCL, Carnival, they're all part of the Carnival Cruise Company or Cruise Corporation, I think it is. You know, they're part of something wider. If all of Carnival collapses, I mean, we've got bigger problems. You know, that would be an impossible situation. They would be, I think, cut half of the cruising in the world if that happens.
Yeah, but I think also the key to this as well, and that sort of thing, we put this in the context of all travel. If you book a holiday right now, you've got a flight element, you've got a hotel element of it. In the travel industry, it's been ravaged by COVID, so we're expecting to see company failure. But the point here is booking through a travel agent and booking it as part of a package. You've got either ABTA protection or you've got atoll protection if it's got a flight element to it. And that's the key to this. I talked about a lot about this last week. There are so many unknowns. I describe it as taking a leap of faith. And what we're here is your safety net, you know, to protect you as you leap, because we don't quite know what things are going to be like, but we know how to keep you protected, particularly financially. So, Kim, the answer to that is I don't think they'll all survive. I think the bigger ones will. We've seen some smaller ones go already. But the key to it is just having every protection in place. And it'd just be like, you know, when Monarch went and when Thomas Cook went, you know, that we've got protections in place for you. So you get your money back.
Yeah, I agree. And ultimately, you know, it's in most cases, we're talking about a deposit. Most of these cruises are on low deposits right now. You know, the risk is actually very low in most cases. And actually some cruise companies like P&O have moved their balance due dates for their upcoming cruises to 30 days. So, you know, really, you know, the risk is minimal. But as Julie said, even if something was to go wrong, there are all these provisions in place anyway. And yes, Glenda, thanks for your question. We are going to come on to talk about excursions in a minute. So
okay.
Yeah, we haven't done dining yet, have we?
No, we have not. So Emma said that one of the reasons, hang on, where's me dining gone? Right.
Sorry.
One of the main reasons that she likes to cruise is the entertainment. Well, yes, I like that as well, but dining is my priority. So the photo there that you can see was taken by me, and that is on the Seabourn Ovation, and that is their main dining room. The problem is that light fitting looks a bit like the COVID. So I don't know if that, well, I think that probably was a bad sign a year ago. So, you know, let's talk about the core of the proposition in terms of dining on a cruise ship is buffet, and the buffet quality is just incredible. Now, they have been tackling issues with sort of buffets for years in terms of number of people coming through them, use of utensils and such like, and they're pros at it. But what we're seeing more and more is what's called serve buffets. So everything will be there for you, but a member of the crew will actually serve your food to you to prevent that cross-contamination. But probably if you've cruised recently, certainly that was the case when I was on board this time last year, there were a few bits and pieces that you helped yourself to, but the vast majority of it was actually, you know, served by the crew. So in terms of buffet, we will see social distancing, and we're going to see things like I don't know, what would you call it? Sort of, you know, you go in one way and you would come out the other way. But what we're thinking more and more of is that you will have more seated dining. And what we know is the ships are looking at more options for that. So the Seabourn Ovation, which you're looking at there, has only 600. When it at full capacity, it has 604 guests. So that is minuscule compared to when Emma mentioned the largest cruise ship she went on. I think had, what did you say, 6,000 guests, Emma?
Yeah, I think it's about 6,500.
Yeah, crazy. So even on this one, we had, this is the formal dining room. We had an outdoor patio dining. We also had a sushi restaurant, an Italian restaurant, and one other. So there's about 5 or 6 dining options. And what we're seeing more and more is these pop-up dining. So before, the deck wouldn't be, you know, you need good weather for this, but the deck wouldn't have been used necessarily for an evening dining, but they would start to do barbecues and more, you know, specialist dining. So they're going to use more spaces to spread more people out. Potentially, we might see dining hours extended, maybe early dining and late dining. And one thing that we think we will see, it's slightly different because on a luxury cruise, all of the fine dining is included. If you're looking at, say, I know we talked a lot about P&O. If we look at P&O, the actual dining room itself would be included, but there are also some options to upgrade your dining. We went to Epicurean when we were on Azura a couple of years ago. My God, the quality of the food was sensational, but we did pay a supplement for it. But we see perhaps more opportunities to do that, and there'd be like an early bird that, you know, you could have half price if you ate at 6, or you would come in and do something late. So what they're going to do is spread these dining experiences more across the ship. Now, also, again, it really does depend on what type of cabin that you have, but we're seeing more and more in-room dining. Again, if you're on the luxury cruise ships, all of the in-room dining is free. Even on the mainstream cruising, an element of it is. So we have seen some costs creeping in, but we think, well, there'll be more incentivization to have dinner in your cabin. Now, this is something Brian and I do on every cruise that we do on the Seabourn Ovation that we were on, but you know, we would have our, you know, if we were somewhere warm, we'd have our balcony doors open. Someone would come and set the table with white linen and crystal glasses, and then we would order courses from each of the restaurants, which would be delivered, you know, along with our chilled champagne, because that's all part of the experience. And that's a really nice thing to do. And occasionally, if we couldn't get into the restaurant that we wanted to get into, then that is what we would do. Now, if you look at the picture that I put up there, you'll see these larger tables. Now, one of the biggest things that is going to impact people is that dining is going to be reserved to bubbles at this early stage. So that means you will only be able to dine with who you're on the ship with, and that could be possibly just your cabin, but we think it will be extended to maybe several cabins, but that's yet to be confirmed. And it'll also be based on what the restrictions are at home. So if you can only mix one household at home, that may well translate into the ship if you're on a British ship. Now, the biggest question here then is for solo travelers, and this was raised, and we've raised this question with a couple of the cruise lines. Right now, if these rules are adhered to, it would mean if you were a solo traveller, you couldn't have dinner with anyone else. Well, God, how miserable is that? Well, actually, it might be delightful for some people, but most people would at some stage want to enjoy dinner with someone else. And what the general consensus looks like is that you would create a bubble of solos. So on a trip, there would be a certain amount of people who were just travelling on their own. And they would be, if they wanted to, would have a table dedicated to maybe 4 or 6 people, and that would remain there. So they've got to find some middle ground with that to still maintain that, you know, maintain that dining experience. But, you know, dining is a huge part of cruising, and we just don't think it can be compromised, you know, because people are expecting it as part of the experience. But, you know, reservations will be key, and we talked about technology. You will be required probably to book via TV or by the app in some, but the restaurant that you see there, you could rock up any time that it was open, expect to be seated on a table for 2 to a table of whatever you wanted, and that's the level of service. That will change because they just can't accommodate that. You will have set dining times for sure. Freedom dining, I think, for the foreseeable future, certainly for 2021, is probably just a step too far and just a step too challenging. Anything else there, Emma?
No, I don't think so. Only to say, really, I think that there are times, and I said this with entertainment, but it also applies to dining, where some sort of dining venues are just kind of are empty for hours of the day. Notably, the specialty dining doesn't often get used at lunchtime. And again, I will think we'll see a move towards that, because that seems to me like a perfect opportunity. Give people the opportunity to have a reduced fee specialty dining at lunchtime, and then you're automatically going to be cutting numbers of people that are going to be trying to get into the other restaurants. And on most mainstream cruise lines, when you're on a sea day, they will open the main dining room at lunchtime. I think we'll see that on every day, not,
Yeah,
you know,
good point.
even on port days, just to help to kind of facilitate that social distancing. But largely, I think the experience will be unchanged. I think if you've cruised before, there will be an element of this that you're already used to, but some things will be slightly different, but not significantly that I can say.
One thing I was saying to Emma is the ethos on these smaller luxury ships is quite different, and that is, their view is that you've paid for a level of luxury and convenience. So their view is you should be able to turn up at any restaurant at any time within their opening hours and expect to be seated. I mean, that's a big ask, isn't it? But that's kind of the level that they're trying to operate to. And I've got to be honest, most times I can only think of one time that hasn't been possible. But that, you know, ultimately will have to change. That's just not, I just can't see how we can expect that going forward. Otherwise, you'd have to run at such a low capacity. So we'll have to see on that. But certainly that technology element is far, far better in those larger ships. And I see that as one of the biggest step change for these small luxury lines, because they're going to have to do it to comply with these changes. Hi, Mona, are you okay there?
Yeah.
Oh, did you have a question for us? You came up.
No.
No. Oh, okay. You came up, and I thought you had a question. I just couldn't hear you. Okay. Emma, we've lost the presentation, and we've lost Emma. Ah, well, that's good. We've lost Emma and the presentation. That's not so good. Bear with us a sec. We have a technical hitch. Oh, she's back. Emma, you disappeared. Well, she'll be back. She was obviously just so overwhelmed by my dining. She's now on silent, and I'm trying to get her off it. So I know she was having some technology issues earlier, so I can only assume that they've continued. So we'll wait for the presentation to start again. All right, okay. I don't know if she's going to come back to it. What I'll get on to, you haven't got my slide, but this is what's called behind the scenes. And Emma, when she's back in, she will do port excursions. So the behind the scenes element is all of the things that are going on for COVID compliance and to keep you safe, that you hopefully will never see. Okay, so the question was asked about crew, will there be less? No, we've got no evidence that that is the case, because as Emma pointed out, the level of cleaning will be, you know, we talked about perhaps using the theatre several times a day for events. Well, each time that would have to be fully cleansed. So we don't see any, you know, reason that they would reduce the crew numbers. Now, what we're in terms of the regulations for cruising going forward, both in the US and here, they have to improve their medical facilities. I don't know if any of you've been on a cruise and had to use the medical facilities. They are normally pretty good, and on the larger ships, they're like mini hospitals. So, Emma, you're back. Okay, I'll carry on. She's just getting. I'll carry on until Emma is ready. So they essentially got these mini hospitals set up. Now, they have been told that they have to improve their medical facilities, both in terms of the numbers that they can accommodate and the facilities that they have got. Also, they have to have what are called isolation plans. Now, isolation plans are if there is a breakout on the ship or someone has symptoms, that we can move them to another cabin. Right back at this, we said, you know, the ship was running at 100% capacity. That would be impossible. That is one of the reasons they can only run at, say, 50 to 75, because we need to keep these rooms you know, available. Now, in terms of enhanced cleaning regimes, you will see when you go to bed at night, the cleaning teams will come out and they will be pretty much cleaning all through the night and at major touch points throughout the whole of the day. Now, there are two other things that they're looking at specifically as well, and we've already started to see a lot of work on this. One is airflow. So to try and keep as much fresh air circulating through the ship as possible into those public spaces, but also filtration. Now, this is a big one for the airlines as well. You might have come across the HEPA filters, but essentially they're able to filter out, you know, pretty much 99.9% of bugs and allergens, not just anything to do with COVID, but lots of things. We're going to see much more sophisticated filtration systems. So this will all be going on in the background. And I think the final point around the crew is they have done some restarting of cruising, and I'm not going to mention names, but some started a little bit early and they had outbreaks. All of those were traced back to the crew, and you know, that's a real lesson that was learned in terms of what they want to. All crew are tested before they get on, plus they have to isolate for 7 days or more before they're allowed to you know, to work. Also, they will be continually be tested throughout the cruise, a minimum of once a week, and that is the new rules. Also, we know that what the cruise lines dearly want is to have their crew vaccinated, and that really does present a problem, because at the moment, you know, if you're in the UK and pretty much anywhere else, that vaccination is up to the government and it's given to its residents first. We really would need to see commercially available vaccines for them to start to be able to do that, and that is not, I don't think we're going to see that in at least 12 months, but that's definitely the way the cruise lines wants to go. Social distancing, you might be aware, we might have these luxury cabins, but there could be up to 4 people in crew cabins. They are trying to spread that out and minimize it to 2, but you know, where that is possible. But quite often you've got husbands and wives and families that work on cruise ships, so potentially they could still stay together. But also they will be in PPE, and that will be very, very strictly adhered to for their own protection and also for yours as well. But I think there's an absolute spotlight on crew, because they are seen, if we're testing all the guests, then the crew, I mean, they've got to be tested and you know, retested. But the point about this is, if you think about you're staying in your hotel in Greece, that staff will come and go home and come back. At least on a ship, we're all in this bubble together, and I'll talk a bit more about that as to, you know, why I'm cruising in 2021. Now, Emma, can you hear me? You disappeared on me.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi dropped out, but I'm back now.
Did it? Okay, right. I managed to waffle on in your absence. I've done behind the scenes, but possibly we've missed one in the middle. Is that port excursions? Okay, just go back to that for me.
Yeah,
you're on.
So just wanted to talk about port stops. I know that's something that's Glenda was asking about. And at the moment, the news from the cruise lines is that initially, certainly, when cruises restart, they will be expecting people to only take port excursions that are sponsored or recommended by the cruise lines. And this is so that they can maintain that level of kind of bubbling, really, of the people who are on the cruise ship. But more than that, it's about reassurance for the destinations, because in order for a cruise to sail, there has to be 2 things. Obviously, it's got to be what's going on the ship, but also the sort of regulations and communication with the ports. And one of the ways that they will be able to restart is if they can give the ports some reassurance that they're not going to be offloading a load of people, you know, COVID positive people, or they're going to be putting things in place to make sure that people coming off the ship are as safe as possible. But the crews also won't want people picking something up on shore and bringing it back on the ship. So initially they will be looking to to people to have port excursions sponsored by the ship. I think that will see an increase in options. I think, you know, that might work out well in some instances. I was saying to Gilly, I can imagine that they will have some negotiating power if they are running more excursions in an area to actually negotiate, for example, private visits to certain venues in order to maintain social distancing. So your experience on a shore excursion might actually be better. So, you know, there may be some advantages to this, but it is going to be slightly more restrictive than you would normally expect.
I think we agree, don't we, Emma? If you like just to get off the cruise ship and do your own thing, that is going to be challenging in 2021.
Definitely in 2021, but my personal experience and my personal view is that this is the first thing they will look to try and give as much freedom as they can, because this is the one area I think is going to be more of a pain point to certain customers. And it kind of does depend why you cruise. I don't necessarily cruise for the port stops, so it's not a massive deal for me. But if you're going to a very specific cruise for a very specific reason, then that might be more of an issue for you. Some things also I think we'll see more of is private islands or private destinations. So in the Caribbean particularly, there are a number of private islands, Castaway Key, Coco Key, Princess Key, that the cruise lines own and that they have complete and utter control over. So if they're taking you to a private island, the crew that are on the ship will be the crew that work on shore. The food that's on the ship will be the food that you eat on shore. There will be some local people doing cleaning and things like that, but there's not necessarily a need for them to interact with you. They can do those things when the cruise line is not there, and when the ship arrives, then you'll just be the people from the ship. So I think those will be heavily used in the Caribbean, and I know Royal Caribbean were talking about developing one in China, in Asia, and that, you know, we may well see more ad hoc options coming up of that nature in order to kind of create more of a little bubble.
Yeah, Emma, we did that last year. So as I said, we shouldn't have been at sea for 7 days, but we were and we went then to Koh Kood, which is a private island off Thailand, which is owned, I think, by Seabourn or part of that empire. Oh my God, it was incredible just to see them offloading a full bar. I mean a full bar, all the ice, all the cocktails, all the drinks. And then they did this most amazing, you know, barbecue of lobster, you know, salads, desserts, homemade breads. It was just sensational. And you're right. I mean, essentially the only difference is that we weren't having it on the ship and we were doing water sports and, you know, just going crazy because it was great to get off. It was just fabulous.
And, you know, I think what I say to people, you know, you need to be, if you're fixed on a specific port, now is probably not the time to book that cruise. So if you're saying, I really, really want to visit, I was talking to somebody today about a Baltic cruise, St. Petersburg. That is my number one thing to do. And I am booking this ship with this sole intention of going to St. Petersburg. Don't book that in the next 12 to 18 months, because I think there is a chance that we will need to be more flexible with port arrangements. So I've got a cruise booked in August 2022 for Norway. I think, you know, we'll have moved a long way by then. But for example, if they were to swap out one of the ports, that's not a big deal to me. I love Norway, I'll go anywhere. But if I was looking to go to a very specific port, then I would probably think about booking that more in 2023 if you want to, you know, be sure of something, especially if it's somewhere a bit further away, or, you know, there are kind of places where it's more likely that you'll be able to visit, and some places where it might be a slight more of a risk. And the other thing that I would also say in terms of cruises, the cruise I've booked is Norway, and one of the other reasons that I'm totally happy about taking that cruise, and I would go this year if that option became available, is that you could have a fabulous cruise and never get off the ship. There is enough to see while you're on board that you could still feel like you'd visited an amazing country without stepping off the ship. You can
Alaska, we felt that, Emma, as well. I mean, we had like whales and porpoises, we had all sorts, and we got into the glacier. So you're absolutely right. That's, you know, there's lots of lovely things to see.
And I think initially we may see a number of, very early on, a number of cruises to nowhere that just do kind of scenic sailing in order to kind of test out some of the things we've been talking about. So yes, and I would say watch this space with regards to excursions. It will be a little bit of trial and error when they start up to see what works, and, you know, in communication with the ports that they normally go to. Is that anything else there, Gilly?
No, I thought that was a fabulous roundup.
Thanks. So Gilly's talked about behind the scenes, and now we're going to talk a little bit about cruises we have currently booked and why.
Okay, I'm just going to answer. Glenda's put a comment in the chat. So are the cruises running now? No, is a simple answer. And this is a really, really interesting one. Most cruise companies have cancelled till the end of April and some till the end of May. In terms of resumption, we're going to see a difference between cruises that are leaving the UK or who are in America. So for example, the cruises that we expect to see the earliest resumptions on are a UK cruise departing from the UK and going around the UK, because that is, you know, fairly simple in its execution. But I think the important point also to mention is our Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Now, obviously, we've got a complete travel ban at the moment, but even before that and potentially after it's lifted, we've also got FCO advice in place that says it advises against ocean cruising. So we need that to be lifted first. And that is kind of coming to, you know, the point that on my slide here, it won't sail unless it's safe. So there's two factors that have got to happen for me to be able to do this cruise. The FCO has got to change its advice and say that it's safe to do so. And just a point on that, the FCO advice is advisory. It's not like we're in a lockdown now and it's illegal. FCO advice is just advisory. So you're not breaking the law if you decide to ignore it. But what you are normally doing is invalidating your travel insurance policy. So if you are thinking of doing it, you know, if you're going to a destination that isn't on the FCO list, or you are thinking of cruising, you're not breaking the law, but you need to get a special insurance policy in place. Now, Emma and I don't encourage that in any shape or form. We would encourage you to exercise your rights then to cancel and to rebook or potentially refund. But you know, that's something that we can obviously discuss. So there's a picture of Brian and I there. We're in the main dining room there on the Regent Navigator. So we were in Alaska there. That was incredible. So my point, we are booked to go back with Seabourn back on the Ovation. I just love that ship. We're due to go back on the 9th of October, and we're doing a med cruise. It's Athens to Athens. So 14 nights. So I don't think that's going to be happening unless two things happen: is our government changes its advice, and also that the regulators have signed off on, in this case, Seabourn and the ship itself. But also, I've said this throughout this presentation, that travel through 2020 wasn't without its challenges, and it will remain in 2021. And all of the procedures that I'm anticipating and that we've talked about here are no different from those that I've experienced in hotels this year. Now, 3 is quite controversial, but this is a personal opinion. I honestly feel safer in a cruise environment because the crew are not being swapped out and they're not getting on and off. The people who are on the ship got on with you and they're going to get off with you. You're kind of in it together, and that creates this kind of I suppose camaraderie, in terms of, you know, you've got to wear your mask, you know, you've got to hand sanitize because you're all in it together. And I felt much more protected by that. And I said, I sailed when COVID was on the radar this time last year. Now, we didn't have all of these measures in place, but they were starting you know, to come in. So and also with this as well, it's booked. If FCO advice says I can't travel, I'm entitled then to a rebooking, refund, and all of those things. So I've got full protection, as you would imagine, and obviously I've got my travel insurance in the mix there. So the personal risk to me is, you know, is minimum. But I knew if I didn't book it, I wouldn't be going, and if I have booked it, then I've got a chance of going. Just looking then, Mona's asked a question here about reduced capacity mean higher prices. That's a really interesting question. I'm going to ask Emma, what do you think? I've got quite an opinion on this. What do you think?
I can't see the question, so can you just read it for me?
Will reduced capacity mean higher prices?
I think availability will see higher prices.
Yeah.
So anything that's in demand will command a premium. I think cruise lines won't have any trouble selling cruises for 2022. People are literally desperate. And when I was speaking to P&O yesterday, they said that their sales for 2022 are incredibly strong.
Yeah,
and they
exactly
are seeing price rises because not because they're pushing the price. I mean, so airlines and cruises have like a price schedule. So every time a certain number of seats or cabins get sold, you move into the next price bracket. That's kind of how travel is sold anyway. So if you're paying a higher price, it's because more people have booked the product that you're interested in.
Yeah,
so I don't think they're pushing the price up, but it will go up as a result.
Yeah, there is a fundamental thing that's going on here as well. And I said this right at the beginning. The first cruise I ever did was on Oceania, and I had an inside cabin, because that's all I could afford. It was, you know, I had all the cruise experience. It was absolutely amazing. I just didn't have a window or a balcony. But, you know, but going forward, realistically, in 2021, even into 2022, inside cabins are just not recommended for the ventilation, filtration reasons. So I think that you may not see them being sold, or not in the same amount of capacity. So in terms of rising prices, actually the price may be the same, but you may not be able to get access to those entry-level cabins. So you might be paying then for a balcony, and you may not have wanted that. I strongly recommend it. But or you might having to upgrade to a suite because you know, all of those cabins have gone. And there are another factor that's happened as well, is that because everything cancelled in 2022, the vast majority of people booked into 2021, or they accepted credit notes, and those credit notes were inflated. So not for in all cases, but most of them were inflated to like 125%. So if you had £100 voucher, or say, let's have you this for easy, you had £1,000 voucher, you then had a voucher that was 1,250. So you've got all of those in the market as well, which are who have rebooked. So across all holidays, regardless of whether it's cruising or anything, we have never seen forward bookings like we've seen now. And the thing is, there is a limited capacity with ships. So yes, I think all of those things will push up prices, but you've got another factor, and that's the flight element. We're seeing a real rise in flight prices again because of availability. Whilst an airline might still be running from A to B, it might only be doing one flight a day rather than its usual 3. So we're seeing a reduction in capacity in air as well. So it's not so bad when they've got chartered, but if you're using a scheduled airline, then that could be a problem. So my view is, yes, we will see a rise in prices.
Yeah, I do agree.
Not with them just loading it on. It's all to do with these other factors as well. But we're seeing a rise in price across all holidays, so this will be no different.
And in fact, that's one of the reasons why I'm talking about my cruise in 2022. But just before I talk about that, to say I don't have a cruise booked in 2021, but I absolutely will sail in 2021 if I can. So the minute that there are cruises that are going ahead, I will be looking to book. The reason I haven't booked is partly because I already have 3 holidays booked this year and 2 holidays booked next year. So I really need to make sure which ones go ahead and don't go ahead first before I commit to any other holidays. But also I have a 7-year-old, so we can only travel in school holidays. She has a heart condition, so I've got to think about her in terms of a medical sort of what's medically appropriate. So for me, I can't book a cruise for 2021 yet, but I absolutely will if I can. I may be crashing Gillian Price cabin.
You're more than welcome.
Cabin for 3, please. But I have got a cruise booked for 2022. I have mentioned it. I'm going on Iona in August 2022, and I booked this on the day that it was released. And in fact, I've got a few people on the call who are coming on that cruise with me. I think we've got about 11 cabins or 10 cabins on that cruise already, of customers, friends, family, all sorts. And the reason that I booked that cruise for 2022 2022 is, as we have just discussed, book it now or you will not get in. If you wish to travel, and that is generally across the board, not just for cruising, in 2022, if you wait until end of 2021 or beginning of 2022 to book, there is going to be such little capacity. You will either struggle to get what you want or you will be absolutely paying through the nose. I am, talking about taking my family with me. In 2022, the new procedures will be embedded. They will have chance to change and adapt things. I'll be able to see more clearly, for example, what the children's provisions will look like. And for me, I would want to know that before I would take Harriet on a cruise, because obviously, putting her health at risk is non-negotiable. So I want to see what that looks like before we actually take her. And then, even though prices are increasing, the value of a cruise compared to the value of a land holiday is still incredible. The prices you can get a week's cruise, for example, up to Norway, with all your food included, versus even a self-catering holiday to the Med for 2022, they don't compare really. And in terms of a comparison of experience for me, if I went on a cruise, I had a balcony cabin, I had 3 meals a day, I could go to a show, I could sit up on the deck or on my cabin and look at beautiful scenery. That for me would be much more of a holiday than going to a hotel where maybe, there are restrictions on where you can go, or you have to be careful which parts of the resort you're allowed to go to, or there's social distancing on the beach or whatever. To me, there's just so much more value in a cruise.
And that kids club, Emma. Don't lie about that.
And the kids club. But there's just so much more value in a cruise, and you can have a much more full experience, even if there are some restrictions in place, by comparison to a land vacation to me. And that's not to say I don't like land holidays. Again, I got 5 holidays booked and 4 of those are not cruising. So, all holidays welcome here. But in terms of a value for 2022, cruising's up there for me. And that's why I've booked my cruise.
You've got some great questions coming through. So chances of summer 2021 cruises going ahead? If not, are they likely to cancel before full payment is required? This is with P&O. Chances of summer 2021, summer is quite a big window. That actually is between July and October. So it depends when you're in that mix. And also what destination you're going from and where you're going. So I need a bit more information on that. But the general consensus is that cruising will start in May, but we don't expect to see any mass cruising until July, if not later. Both Emma and I are of the Baltics in August. Yeah.
I think that I don't know, Manu, whether that will go ahead or not. But what P&O are doing is this 30-day balance payment. So I do think that if things are looking like they are now, they will continue. I think that goes up to July or June at the moment. I think they will continue to extend that. So
yeah, they don't want to be refunding, Emma, do they? Because it was such a pain in the backside for them to take them. I know people think, for cash flow, but no, because they know it's got to come back, and they're still struggling making refunds now, and people have lost loyalty to the brand. So they are desperately trying not for this to happen. It may happen if we think that travel is going to open up, but if they're sure that it won't, they're doing everything to prevent this.
When I spoke to them yesterday, they said it made absolute sense to them to reduce the balance payments, particularly for cruises that are cruise only, and that will be out of the UK, because they have control over that. They don't have to refund. They don't want people to cancel at loss of deposit, because that's the worst scenario for them, even though they get to keep a bit of money for free. It's actually the worst scenario, because then they're losing that customer for a future cruise. They may never rebook a cruise, or it might be a really long time before they book a cruise. So I think they will continue to do that until they are certain, or with a fair degree of certainty, the cruises are going to restart. So I think you'll be okay to wait a little bit for that one. And the other question Mona was asking is, will longer cruises start later? And if so, cruises restart this summer is more likely to be a week or less. I think that's likely. I think that's likely. but it's, I don't know, what's your view on that, Gilly? I think in terms of...
Well, we talked about, there's two polar opposite views on this. Okay, we talked about America and the CDC. So Emma, I can never remember what this stands for. Centre for Disease Control, is that right? Okay, so the Centre of Disease Control in America is saying you have got to jump through all these hoops. So this is only cruises. So if you were doing an Alaska cruise, this is obviously going to count. So they're saying that they're not permitting any cruises that are longer than 7 days at the moment. Now, that is one school of thought, but that is the CDC, and it only regulates for America. There is a second train of thought, which I actually think is more logical, is that cruises will be longer. Because once you've got people on there and people are complying and following the rules, it's actually easier to keep people safe over that period of time. Okay, because you've created the safe bubble, as long as people are obviously, following the rules. But what we generally think is that we will have less opportunity for excursions in terms of these destinations where you would say get on for 7 days and do 6 port visits. We think that will be unlikely. We think it's more likely to be 2 or 3. And this is one of the big dichotomies between the differences in the brand. So America is saying 7 days or more. More European are saying we want to go longer. So that is really going to depend who you're cruising with and where you're going.
And I think some of this is not known yet, and I think once they restart and they can see if there's a difference in kind of the way that people comply versus, I think short cruises are going to be a bit of a nightmare from what Gilly is saying.
Yeah,
but
I mean, yeah, you've got all that.
That turnaround, a really quick turnaround, does seem a bit counterintuitive. But what I also think we may see is if they do cancel specific, so if they have to cancel like a whole host of cruises to one particular area, but we are allowed to sail, you'll start them seeing redeploying ships to other itineraries, and what they'll do is the same itinerary over and over again to known ports. So if they have to cancel, for example, the Baltic cruises, there's normally 3 or 4 Baltic cruises a year, so they'll free up like 6 weeks. So then you might just see like around the UK cruise, and they'll just do 1 week, 1 week, 1 week, 1 week, because they will have known protocols and procedures in place for that. So I think the picture for 2021 is going to be very mixed, and we're not going to know everything. But you know what? I'm quite excited about that. Like genuinely, if they like said, there's this cruise going with new ports we haven't been to, I'll be first on the list. Like I'm.
Yeah, we had a magical mystery tour this time last year because we set off from Hong Kong. We were due to go to the Philippines. Well, we never got there. We were then diverted to Vietnam. Didn't get there. Then we were then diverted to Cambodia. We didn't get in there, but Thailand was very kind and accepted us. So I'd never been to Thailand before, so yes, it was a magical mystery tour. But I think the point about that is certain people on the ship got incredibly stressed by that. I would say if that is going to stress you out, then cruising in 2021 isn't the right thing to do, because I think that nothing in terms of a destination is guaranteed.
No, I would agree. I would say, and I've said this to my customers about all holidays, the more flexible and going with the flow you can be, the more likely you are to have a less stressful experience. Yeah, and, I honestly think the ability to travel has been taken away from us for so long. I'll go anywhere. I'll go anywhere on a cruise. I'm not fussy, and I've got to say that's got to be better than being stuck in my house in wet Wales in January. So like any cruise has got to be better than that.
Okay. Well, I think, are we pretty much at the end there, Emma? We've been going an hour and a half nearly.
No, I think we need to let these people go and get on with their lives.
Yeah, I thought, the fact that people still stayed on is a miracle.
Fair play. So just to let you know that we are doing 2 more of these. I mean, if you have had enough today, that is completely understandable. Like an hour and a half of Gilly and I is more than anyone needs. No, but we do next week. We are doing another session. It won't probably be as long as this one because we'll have more control about how much to cover, but we really wanted to give you as much information as we could this this week, is going to be talking about mainstream cruise lines, just a bit of an overview of the different cruise lines, about what they offer, who they're suited for. It's going to be more with a future view rather than, you know, anything specifically about cruising in 2021 or anything, but more about generally those cruise lines and what they may offer. So if you are thinking of booking a cruise for 2022 or 2023, and I will get some sort of dates about what is availability, you know, is like, we do have a lot of cruises now to end 2022 and 2023 and more coming. Royal Caribbean released quite a lot of dates yesterday about what they're sort of putting forward. That's going to be an overview of those. So whether you're kind of new to cruising or you've only cruised on one line and you want to find a little bit more about others, please do join us for that next week. And then the week after, we're going to be doing luxury cruising, talking about Gilly's favorite subject, small ships with that's
a 3-hour session, that one, Emma.
Yeah, good luck. So I don't know if there are any final questions before we finish. Thank you so much for your patience. Yeah, did you if you have a question, just unmute and ask.
Unmute.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Of course. Who we got? Adrian. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, right. Adrian and Ruth, we're thinking about potentially cruise the end of February next year. We want to at least go to St. Lucia. We might have a 2-center holiday, a land holiday, St. Lucia, and maybe combine that with a cruise. Now, thinking about hurricane season, is that an okay time to cruise around the Caribbean?
Fabulous. February. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be too put off by hurricane season, full stop. But the main cruising time in the Caribbean is November to Feb. That you're right in the peak. Calm seas, warm, humidity's coming out of the air. The only thing that's at the back of my mind there, though, is St. Lucia's beautiful. I'm hoping to be there in April. I'm just trying to rack my brains if I can think of any cruise that starts or finishes in St. Lucia, because the vast majority start in Barbados, but
right.
It is very easy to get a connecting flight. So we just have to look at that for you as well. But no, February, perfect time to go.
Okay.
But we'd have to start looking at that now, because you know, you'd be right in the peak season for that. So but good choice. Love a bit of the Caribbean.
Most of them are Fort Lauderdale rather than Barbados.
Oh, okay. So, but sorry, did you say you want to go to St. Lucia though? In terms of
we got our silver wedding anniversary, because that's where we got married. So we want to go back to St. Lucia.
Where did you get married in St. Lucia?
Sandals.
Which one?
Halcyon.
Ah, beautiful. I'm at Le Toc, but I got married in St. Lucia as well.
Oh, right,
so
okay.
we're kindred spirits.
Yeah. So we want to do that and make, you know, and then combine it with something else if we can make it work. But that's the end of February next year. So that's, you know, if that's the ideal time to do it.
Beautiful. I think you came via me, or did you come via Emma? I don't know. I think you're
via you, Gilly.
Yeah. Well, let's set up an appointment after this and you know, have a chat about possibilities. But that sounds like a plan, and I'm loving that. Very romantic. We can get a vow renewal thrown in the mix as well.
It's only, you know, first time in 25 years, Gilly.
It won't be the last.
Well, don't know about that.
All right, thank you.
Does anybody have any other final questions? As I said, you know, if you need to go, you know, please do so. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We're really overwhelmed by how many people have joined and how many have stayed. If you need to go, please do. But if you have a question or there's anything you want to ask, Gilly and I will hang around for a little while after. We're, you know, we've got nowhere to go.
My jacket potato's ready, Emma.
Oh no! Someone else
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, yeah. So you were saying about indoor cabins. So we've got 2 cruises booked for 2022.
Okay.
One to the Baltic, which I hope we do get to St. Petersburg, but obviously if we don't, then that's fine. But the other one is a little bit earlier. It's in May, and I think I mentioned that my son was getting married, and so we've organised this little mini cruise on P&O as a hen do.
Okay.
With inside cabins.
Okay.
So what would happen if they then decided that they weren't going to use inside cabins?
I think you'll be okay because it's already booked. But I think that our view is if you're booking now or you've got the option to upgrade to an outside cabin. But just a couple of things on that. When are you going?
May 2022.
Oh, May 2022.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. Predominantly, sorry, if you're going to say May 2021, I was going to say I don't think it'll be going ahead anyway. But for May 2022, it's going to be a completely different ball game then.
Okay.
I think I think you'll be fine. They've already got their capacity controls in place.
Okay.
So yeah, you'll be fine.
I don't think
I
they'll
don't want
stop
to
you
disappoint the
having.
bride to be.
I don't think they'll stop you having an inside cabin, but if you were going certainly on a longer cruise, our recommendation would be have a balcony if you can. But on a short cruise, it's probably not going to be as much of a.
No. Okay, that's fine then. So as I say, I don't want to disappoint the bride to be.
Yeah, okay. So Lynette's asking a question there about the Galapagos for 2022. Yeah, we need to look at that because you're right. We've got the issues with connecting flights and such like. Also depends when you're looking at in 2022. I'd be more comfortable later in the year, but we need to look at. But I wouldn't be surprised if we've already got capacity issues on that. So that we may have to even tip into 2023 with that. Let me look at that offline.
Yeah. Okay. The August 2022, my concern is 2023 is taken up now with 2021, 2020's holiday.
Nuts, isn't it? Absolutely nuts. Yeah, okay.
And then we've got the problem with us is we've got kids that are coming up to GCSEs and then it'll be A levels depending on how far in advance. So we've got to be really mindful of when we defer to all the time, and if it's too far ahead, we'll have one have left home.
Happy to come back for a trip to the Galapagos, let me tell you. Yeah. Okay, let me we need to look at that now. Okay.
Thank you.
My pleasure, Lynette, lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us. Can you see the chat, Emma? Because
yeah, no,
I think that's I think we'll close it there, but both you will either have Emma's details or you'll have mine, so do reach out to us. And just another little thing just to say, it's really tough in travel right now. Emma and I absolutely love what we do, but if you've enjoyed tonight and you just share our details or like and share our things, it's really powerful for us to meet and share what we do, because a lot of people don't know that the service that Emma and I offer even exists. So if you could help spread that word, that would be awesome for us.
Gilly, Karen's asking about the Zoom links to the next session. Would you send? I'm going to send mine out to anyone who's been on this call anyway.
It's actually going to be identical, Emma.
Send them again. So.
Did you hear that, Emma? It's actually the same.
Oh yes, it is the same. You're right. Yeah, that's true.
But we will send them out again. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, is that everything?
Anybody else got any burning questions? Lovely. Well, thank you all so much, and have a great evening, everyone.
Take care.